The girl's revenge against the millionaire after a shocking confession before the wedding. Rebecca's world exploded the moment she stumbled upon the truth, a secret sharp enough to cut through her dreams like glass. Just days before the grand ceremony in the heart of New York City, under glittering lights and the weight of endless champagne toasts, Gabriel's mask cracked. The charming millionaire she thought she knew showed his darkest side. He wasn't the man waiting for her at the altar. Not at all. The confession hit Rebecca like a thunderclap. Gabriel had been cheating. Yes, with someone dangerously close to their circle. But worse still, he'd been scheming all along to steal her family's fortune. The very legacy she was supposed to marry into was at risk. Her chest tightened, breath caught in her throat, hands trembling as the room spun around her. How could she have been so blind? The man who whispered sweet promises was weaving a web of lies, and she was the prey. She wasn't going to wilt away in heartache. No, Rebecca decided to fight back, cold and calculated, quiet as the ticking clock, counting down to the day that should have been the happiest of her life. Every encounter with Gabriel became a stage. His smiles, his careless words, they all were caught by the hidden recorder tucked inside her bracelet. She smiled, nodded, laughed, pretending to be the blissful bride, wrapped in love and hope. But the truth was rising like smoke in a steel cage. Their penthouse suite, the sprawling garden of the venue, even the bustling streets below became silent witnesses to her silent hunt. Meanwhile, Gabriel's arrogance only grew. Unaware of the game unraveling beneath his feet, he flaunted his deceptions with an impish grin. Late-night calls left on speakerphone, whispering secrets to someone Rebecca hadn't yet met. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash she was both behind and in front of. Then came Henry, sharp-eyed, quick-witted, a lawyer with a reputation for tearing down giants. He saw the cracks in her act, the storm lurking behind her calm. Meeting him felt like breathing fresh air after drowning for too long. Neither spoke of revenge at first, but their determination was a spark that ignited something unstoppable. Together, they began crafting a plan. A web so tight it would trap Gabriel in his own lies. Every move had to be exact, every word bait. Rebecca's heart pounded, not just with fear or anger, but with a strange new strength. The city around them buzzed with excitement, oblivious to the powder keg set to explode beneath its glittering surface. But just as the honeymoon loomed, an escape Gabriel dreamed of, a shadow crept into Rebecca's path. An obstacle no one saw coming. Something that threatened to unravel not only her plan, but her very future. The nights grew colder, the whispers louder, and as she stared out over the city skyline, Rebecca realized one thing with chilling clarity. In this fight between love and betrayal, the fault lines were shifting, and no one was safe anymore. What would she choose when everything she believed shattered? When revenge wasn't just an option, but a razor-thin edge between salvation and ruin? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss out on any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. She had barely slept since the shocking confession. The city below throbbed with life, unaware of the collision course set before her. Every laugh, every touch with Gabriel felt like an act. Yet, in the moments the truth threatened to surface, Rebecca's resolve hardened. No way was she going to walk down that aisle to a liar. But then came the night. She heard the unmistakable sound of a key turning in their front door. It was too late for Gabriel to come home from a night out. Her gut twisted. She knew he was with someone, possibly the very person who'd been a thorn in her side all along. Her breath caught as the door swung open. But instead of Gabriel, it was Henry. His eyes were wide, panic etched across his face. "Rebecca, you need to see this." "What is it?" Her heart plummeted as she followed him inside. The room felt charged, the air heavy with urgency. He handed her his phone, and she watched the video, her blood running cold. The footage was grainy but clear. There, on the screen, was Gabriel, his arm draped around a woman in a tight red dress, laughing under the dim lights of a bar. But it wasn't just any woman. It was Sarah, her closest friend, the one she'd confided in, shared secrets with. "No, this can't be happening," Rebecca whispered, her world tilting on its axis. The betrayal cut deeper than she ever thought possible. But then the video continued. Gabriel leaned in close to Sarah, whispering something that made her giggle. "We're almost there, just a little longer till the wedding," he said, his voice thick with a mix of triumph and cunning. Rebecca's heart plummeted further as realization dawned. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about all the plans he had, including the fortune she was supposed to inherit. Henry's eyes burned with determination. "We have to act now. We can't let him do this." "Wait," she said, her voice trembling. "What if this is part of something bigger? What if they're—" Before she could finish, a loud crash echoed from outside, breaking their frantic conversation. Rebecca jumped, and Henry's hand instinctively grabbed her arm. They rushed to the window, pulse racing. A car had skidded to a stop right below. The doors flew open, and out poured a group of men, angry, shouting, and chaotic. "They're coming for him," Henry realized, his voice strained. But as they watched in horror, Gabriel appeared from the bar, unaware of the danger closing in on him. Rebecca's mind spun. This was more than a love story gone wrong. It felt like something out of a thriller. Then everything shattered further. One of the men pulled a gun, pointing it directly at Gabriel. Time froze. Fear wrapped around Rebecca like a suffocating blanket. She had wanted revenge, but this was an entirely different game. As the men closed in on Gabriel, it became clear. The stakes were higher than she ever imagined. Was Gabriel just a pawn in a much bigger game? Or was he the true architect of this chaos? Questions swirled, leaving Rebecca breathless. What had she truly signed up for in this tangled web of lies? The echo of sirens bounced off their penthouse walls, a promise of consequences yet to unfold. In a city of dreams, everything felt suddenly fragile. And with every line she'd walked, every secret she'd uncovered, she had to wonder which way the next turn would take her. And who would emerge as the victor when the dust finally settled? The scene outside the window felt surreal. Rebecca's heart raced as she watched in horror. The chaos on the street below unfolded like a nightmare, a heavy cloud of uncertainty rolling in. Henry gripped her arm tighter, his fear mixing with hers. She could barely breathe. All that mattered was Gabriel's safety. But was he worth saving? As Rebecca took a step back from the window, the crashing reality of her life set in. Everything she'd built, a future, a life, and once love, was crumbling. The sirens wailed, growing louder, and she felt a pang of guilt wash over her. She had wanted to expose him, to destroy the man who had built his world on her pain. How would it feel to end him? Yet, standing there, at that moment, she was terrified. "He's in trouble," Henry muttered, his voice strained. "We have to help him." The word startled her. Help him? How could they save someone who'd betrayed her so deeply? Just then, A sudden commotion broke out below. One of the men shouted something that sent a chill down Rebecca's spine. The name, her father's name, cut through the din like a dagger. "Your father owes us. Where is he?" The man's voice echoed up to them, filled with rage. "What?" An icy grip wrapped around her throat. This was no longer just about Gabriel. Her thoughts raced, colliding like a freight train. Had this all been planned? Was Gabriel just a pawn in a game far beyond her comprehension? Suddenly, Gabriel emerged from the bar, but he didn't look like the confident man she knew. Panic twisted his features. He spotted the men, and as he turned to run, another voice called out. A voice Rebecca recognized all too well. "Stop!" Sarah stepped into view from the shadows, her red dress glowing under the streetlights. "Gabriel, wait! It's not what it looks like." Confusion clawed at Rebecca. Sarah? What was she doing there? The betrayal expanded within her chest like an explosion. Had Sarah been playing both sides? The room spun as doubt engulfed her. "Sarah!" Rebecca shouted, unable to contain the storm inside her. "What are you doing with him?" But Sarah's eyes locked onto Gabriel, confusion and fear swirling between them. "It's not just us. Rebecca, please, you don't understand." But then the weight of the moment crashed down as a blaring siren brought her back. Before Rebecca could process what was happening, one of the men lunged forward. The gun glinted in the light, and time slowed. "You're in over your head, Gabriel. Your father isn't the only one with debts to pay." A single shot rang out, shattering the chaos. It felt like the world had stopped spinning. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat, a lump swelling as she watched everything unfold in a whirlpool of disbelief. The bullet struck home. Gabriel fell, collapsing like a marionette with its strings cut. "No!" Rebecca screamed, tearing at the shadows creeping in on her. This was not the way it was meant to go. She had come here to reclaim her life, her fortune, her dignity. But as chaos erupted below, she realized the truth. Her whole life had been a lie. The reality of it crashed down like a dam breaking, sweeping everything away before her. Was her own family involved in this? The frantic whispers, the raised voices below. What had she gotten into? As she turned to Henry, fear etched on his face. She realized they were now entangled in a conspiracy far darker than she had ever imagined. What came next? She needed answers. "Come on," she urged, her voice icy and determined. "We have to find out the truth." The sirens howled still, and she stepped toward the chaos with a new resolve. The rules had changed. Now, she was ready to dive into the depths, wherever that might lead. Everything was about to unravel further, and she was going to be at the center of it all. The chaos below seemed endless. Rebecca stood frozen, her thoughts racing faster than her heart. Gabriel was down there, and her betrayal mixed with fear for his life. The sirens wailed, a relentless reminder of the storm brewing outside and within her. "We need to move," Henry urged, snapping her back into focus. But where would they go? What could they do? Everything felt raw and jagged, like pieces of broken glass strewn across her life. "He deserves this," she whispered, but the words felt hollow with every breath she took. "No one deserves this," Henry shot back, urgency lacing his voice. "We can't let it end this way." She felt a tremor in her hands, a surge of conflicting emotions wrestling for dominance. She wanted revenge, yet a part of her, small, desperate, still felt a flicker of something for Gabriel. The pain of love twisted into a knot deep in her chest. Outside, the scene was pure chaos. The men shouted as more sirens approached, the light of flashing reds and blues flickering across their faces. People up and down the street began to gather, peering from the safety of their apartments, phones out, recording. This was going viral. One tragically beautiful mess. As she stepped closer to the window, a sudden explosion of sound erupted from outside. "Get down!" Henry yelled, pushing her back just as another shot rang out. This time, the crack of the gun echoed like thunder, breaking through the night air. She turned, her heart in her throat. "What's happening?" But before he could answer, everything shifted. A loud thud shook the ground beneath them. The men near Gabriel had vanished in a flurry of chaos, as if they were swept away by an unseen force. "Did you see that?" Henry's eyes were wide, darting toward the commotion. Rebecca's breath hitched, fear curdling in her stomach. "What the—" Then it happened. Out of nowhere, a figure emerged from the darkness behind the men. A woman, dressed in black, her eyes sharp and piercing, her movements swift and purposeful. She was like a ghost, and before Rebecca could process the scene, the woman lunged, knocking the gun from one of the men's hands. Gasps erupted from the small crowd gathered below. Rebecca blinked, trying to catch up with this new reality. Who was this woman? Blood rushed in her ears as chaos reigned, shouting mingling with the crackle of the night. The woman fought like a warrior, taking the men by surprise, all while Gabriel lay slumped against the bar. Confusion and terror etched into his expression. "Stay back," the woman shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. It was fierce, filled with power, and it drew Rebecca in as if magnetized. Suddenly, recognition washed over Rebecca, a chilling tide of realization. "That's—" Her breath caught. "That's my sister." "What?" Henry turned to her, eyes wide with shock. "But how? Why is she here?" Before she could respond, the woman, her sister, flipped one of the men over her shoulder, and he crashed into the pavement with a sickening thud. Rebecca's mind spiraled. The sister she thought she'd lost to the darkness of the past was right here, fierce and unstoppable. But why hadn't she come home? Why now? The answer floated just out of reach as the battle intensified. Something in Rebecca snapped. They had all been living in this twisted game, but the rules were changing. "We have to go," she shouted, urgency flooding her voice. "We have to help her." But as she turned to Henry, his expression changed, something darker creeping into his features. "Help her?" he echoed, almost mockingly. "What if she's been part of it all along?" That single question struck her like a slap. The seed of doubt wormed its way in, twisting her gut. Could it be true? No, Henry, she wouldn't. But before she could finish, gunfire echoed again, and this time it was directed at her sister. Everything felt still, frozen in a moment of horror, uncertainty flooding her mind. A shot. The world held its breath. Who was she even supposed to trust? In that heartbeat, everything shattered once more. As the dust settled, a thought snaked its way through her mind. What if the family she fought for was the very source of this chaos? A new wave of betrayal washed over her. And as her sister spun to face the danger, Rebecca realized with chilling clarity, they were all tangled in a game much larger than any of them could have ever imagined. A shadowy web of secrets that threatened to ensnare them all. And now, she stood in the epicenter, over a precipice she never saw coming. Would she step back or leap into the abyss? The chaos below felt like a scene from a movie, intense, disorienting, electrifying. Rebecca's heart thundered in her chest as her sister, fierce and determined, continued to fight the men that surrounded Gabriel. Shots rang out before her, deafening and sudden. But all she could focus on was the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Go! Help her!" she shouted, urgency clawing at her throat. But just as she moved toward the chaos, Henry pulled her back, his grip tight. "We can't." "Why not?" Her eyes burned with determination. "She's our only chance." But Henry's expression darkened. "What if she's been using us? What if we're walking into a trap?" His words struck her like a punch to the gut. A trap? Could her sister, the one she thought lost, Really be part of this twisted game? The idea churned in her stomach, but she couldn't think about that now. Outside, the commotion grew. A loud crash echoed, and the crowd gasped as more figures appeared. It was half a dozen more men, each armed and shouting, storming into the fray. Gabriel lay there bleeding. Her sister's fierce fighting was becoming frantic against the overwhelming numbers. "Rebecca, please," Henry pleaded, panic rising in his voice. "We're in over our heads. We need to survive." But Rebecca couldn't tear her eyes away from the madness unfolding below. The woman who had been her sister was performing moves she had seen only in action films, swift and powerful. She tackled one of the men, but the others pressed forward like a wave. Then, at the peak of the chaos, a single scream pierced through the night sky. A high-pitched wail of agony. Rebecca turned just as a figure fell from the chaos. A young man, blood dripping from his shoulder, crumpling in a heap. Those who stood too close to the action began to scatter, echoing with fright. Rebecca's breath hitched, but then her heart sank deep into her stomach as she recognized him. A friend from her past, someone she thought was lost to the shadows of betrayal. No, not Ryan. Suddenly, her sister was lunging toward the fallen figure, eyes wide with shock. "Ryan!" she cried, reaching out for the man sprawled on the ground. A shiver of realization ran through Rebecca. "You know him?" The world around her felt like it was collapsing, as if the ground beneath her feet was disappearing. "He's part of this," her sister shouted, venom lacing her words. "You don't understand. He was working with Gabriel. He was set to betray us all." Before Rebecca could respond, everything shifted again. A figure burst from the darkness behind the combatants, older, imposing, shrouded in something sinister. It was her father. "Enough," he bellowed, silencing the chaos. Her heart dropped. What was he doing here? "I told you I would handle this," he thundered, his eyes blazing with fury. He advanced toward the fray, carrying an air of authority that shifted the energy around them. "What?" Rebecca gasped, stepping back. "You're involved? In all of this?" But her father ignored her, signaling to the men around him. They began to fall back, and suddenly the urgency turned uncertain. "Get her out of here," he commanded, gesturing toward Rebecca and Henry. "Now." "No." "Oh," she shouted. In the silence that followed, Rebecca realized one thing. Everything she thought she knew had been a lie, and the truth was just beginning to surface. Rebecca froze as her father fell, a cruel twist of fate unfolding before her. The world around her blurred into a cacophony of screams and chaos. "Dad!" she cried, her voice strangled with disbelief and rage. The powerful man she'd always known was suddenly fragile, crumpled on the pavement like an old piece of paper. Her heart ached, and a pang of compassion shot through her, wrestling with the anger she felt toward his tangled web of lies. Henry was shouting now, urging her away, but she couldn't tear her gaze from her father. The reality she'd tried to grasp slipped further away. She felt trapped between a rock and a hard place. Should she help him, or pursue the truth that felt like a knife at her back? Her sister was still battling, dodging punches and grappling with the men. But Rebecca's world had narrowed to the fight. Then, the panic set in. She couldn't watch this. "We have to go! We need to help him!" she screamed. But the chaos swallowed her voice. Henry was shaking his head. "No, Rebecca, it's a trap." His eyes were wild with fear. "We can't trust anyone." But as he spoke, the tide shifted. A crowd began to close in, phones recording the spectacle like vultures waiting for scraps. With one final push, she broke free from Henry's grasp and darted toward her father. For a brief moment, everything seemed to slow down. The noise faded, and all she could hear was her own heartbeat thudding loudly in her ears. She reached her father, desperate to help, But he looked up at her, eyes darkening with a mix of regret and determination. "Stay back," he rasped, his voice strained. "This isn't what it seems." But she didn't care. She was here and he was her father. "I don't care. I can help you." The urgency snapped in her words. Suddenly a flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure burst through the crowd, a familiar silhouette. Her breath caught in her throat, disbelief washing over her. It was Sarah, her closest friend, the very person she thought had betrayed her. "Rebecca, don't!" Sarah shouted, rushing toward them. "It's not safe!" "What are you doing here?" she blurted, confusion twisting in her gut. "You plotted this, didn't you?" "No!" Sarah's voice rose, panic so real. "I came to warn you." The urgency in Sarah's eyes was palpable. "You're in danger. They're not here for Gabriel. They're here for your father." That hit like a brick wall. "What do you mean? Why?" "Because he's been double-crossing them," Sarah yelled, desperation lacing her tone. "He's been playing both sides. They're about to expose everything." The ground dropped from under Rebecca as her heart sank. In that moment, she saw clearly. Her father wasn't just a looming figure in her life. He was a puppet master entangled in the very strings she was fighting against. No, that can't be true. But just as she began to process it, the unexpected happened. A loud explosion split the air. A fiery flash surged from the direction of the bar, sending debris flying everywhere. "Get down!" Sarah screamed, tackling Rebecca as the shockwave blasted over them. The scene erupted into chaos. People shouted and ran in every direction, confusion reigning. Pain shot through Rebecca's side as she hit the ground hard. Her heart raced, a mix of fear and disbelief twisting tightly in her chest. As the smoke cleared, she raised her head, shocked. A shadow moved among the rubble. It was Gabriel, his face bloody but alive, and somewhere deep inside, a flicker of hope burned within her. But then she noticed something, a small piece of paper fluttering in the wind, floating down beside her. It landed at her feet. Rebecca reached out with trembling hands, her heart racing. She picked it up and scanned the message, written in her father's unmistakable scrawl. The words sent a cold tremor through her. "Trust no one. I'm not who you think I am." The world blurred again as the weight of the revelation crashed down upon her. She looked around, confusion swirling in her mind. Who could she trust now? As she felt the ground shift beneath her feet, the truth loomed, dark and menacing, ready to unravel everything she believed. The night was far from over, and shadows danced dangerously close. The paper trembled in Rebecca's hand, the scrawl of her father's message burning in her thoughts. "Trust no one. I'm not who you think I am." Her heart raced, a wild mix of betrayal and confusion flooding her chest. "Rebecca!" Sarah yelled, panic in her eyes. "We can't stay here." But she hung back, voice heavy with emotion. Outside, chaos reigned. The crowd grew frantic as sirens wailed, piercing through the murky air. Gabriel lay slumped, bleeding, and her father was crumpled, seeming smaller than she'd ever seen him. It felt like the ground was spinning under her, twisting the truth into shadows. "Get everyone out," her father barked, pushing people away as if he were still in control. But Rebecca felt the fraying rope of his authority slipping. "You need to listen to me. This is not the time." But before he could finish, something shifted. A deep rumble echoed across the street. Mixing with the cacophony of fear, Rebecca stepped closer, her throat tight, as the air crackled with an unsettling energy. Then it happened. An explosion rocked the ground. It didn't come from the bar. It erupted from a nearby building. Smoke billowed upward like a ghost, ready to consume them all. Screams cascaded around her, a wave of terror crashing into her, knocking her off balance. "No!" she shouted. instinctively reaching for her sister and Henry. The world spun. She saw the dark plume rising behind her father. Suddenly, it felt like the very city was collapsing. When the dust settled, her eyes widened in horror. The explosion hadn't just rocked the street. It had knocked down the precarious balance of everything she thought she knew. "Is everyone okay?" Henry shouted, pushing through the chaos, fear radiating from his every pore. She breathed, recognizing him as if he were a specter from her dark past. It couldn't be. He was supposed to be gone. But there he was, stepping from the wreckage like a demon claiming its throne. No, this was impossible. He had been her father's right-hand man, wrapped in a cloak of loyalty. A shiver of recognition ran down her spine. "What are you doing here?" she called out, her heart doubling in speed. "I set the stage," Wade replied, his voice so smooth it made her skin crawl. "This was never about the money, Rebecca. This is about your family's secrets. Everything is about to come crashing down, just like this building." The realization crashed over her like a wave. This wasn't just a robbery gone wrong. This was a violent upheaval. "You?" she whispered, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "You betrayed us all." "Betrayed?" he smirked. "No, sweetheart. I'm just the messenger." With that, everything erupted. One of the henchmen, who had been lurking in the shadows, lunged forward. "Get the girl!" he shouted, grasping for Rebecca. But before she could react, Sarah spun, her eyes wild. "No, stay away from her!" She pushed Rebecca aside just as the man lunged. The room froze for a heartbeat. "Sarah!" But her voice faded into silence as more chaos descended. Gunfire broke out amid the screams, ricocheting off brick walls. People scrambled. An enormous crash. She looked back just in time to see her father's loyal men falter. With that distraction, Wade's henchmen were swarming, and the air, thick with tension, felt electric. Time slowed. Reeling from the shock of betrayal, Rebecca couldn't catch her breath. "What does he want?" she finally pleaded, looking to Henry, desperation in her voice. The horrifying reality gripped her heart. Has this all been a lie? The frantic cacophony swirled around her. "Every family has its secrets," Wade said with a chuckle, arrogance oozing from him. "You're just beginning to learn about yours." Suddenly, a shocking clarity pierced through the disorder. The true nature of her father's world lay bare. The lies she'd believed were tissue-thin. Her father wasn't just a man controlling a fortune. He was the villain in this story, entangled in debts and deception. As the smoke thickened, as chaos engulfed, Rebecca's heart pounded in anticipation of what would come next. The truth was unfolding, and with it, the realization that the next moment could change everything. And just like that, a deeper plunge into the darkness awaited her, the stakes higher than she could ever imagine. The chaos swirled around Rebecca like a storm. Wade stood there, smirking, words dripping with malice. "Your family has secrets, Rebecca. I'm just here to make sure they see the light." Henry pulled her back, panic etched on his face. "We need to get out, now." But the urgency in his voice fell on deaf ears. Her father lay bleeding, the world spinning into a disastrous whirlpool. The sirens screamed louder, drowning out everything but the pounding of her heart. "Stop!" she screamed, desperation clawing at her throat. But as she watched Wade, the rising tide of anger pressed against her. "You think you're in control? You're nothing!" He laughed, that twisted grin stretching wider. "You really don't know, do you? The truth is far worse than anything you can imagine." Before she could respond, another explosion rocked the street. Confusion erupted around them, people scrambling to escape the destruction. Dust engulfed them, choking her breath. "Sarah!" she shouted, but the chaos swallowed her voice. In the haze, her focus snapped back to her father. He grimaced, trying to get up, but blood poured from his wound. "Rebecca, you need to listen," he gasped, voice strained. "They were never out for Gabriel. It was always about me." "What do you mean?" Her hands trembled as she reached for him, heart racing with dread. But then she caught a glimpse of Wade, taking command of the situation, eyes gleaming with intent. "Your father has been playing both sides," Wade sneered. "Now, it's time for him to face the consequences." The fear coursed through her like a live wire. "What consequences?" she demanded, as the pieces began to shift in a terrible way. "What are you planning?" Then, just as Wade opened his mouth to reply, the unexpected happened. The ground shook again, this time more violently. An unseen force surged beneath them. Suddenly, in the midst of the chaos, the asphalt cracked open, like a flower blooming through concrete, revealing a hidden vault below. Gasps filled the air, shocked murmurs rippling through the crowd. Rebecca's heart raced. What was unfolding? This wasn't just ordinary chaos. This was something deeper, darker. The vault had been there all along, buried beneath their feet, waiting to be unearthed. "What is this?" she whispered, dread lacing her voice. Wade's manic grin faded, replaced by disbelief. No, it can't be. But what was it? She noticed something dull glinting in the opening, beckoning like a dark whisper. "Stay back!" Henry shouted, as more men sprinted toward the opening, fear clouding their faces too. Rebecca took a step forward, curiosity overriding her fear. "What's down there?" she murmured, heart pounding. She couldn't ignore it. Every instinct screamed that this vault held secrets that could shatter everything. Her family, her past, her future. "No, don't go," Henry yelled, but she couldn't turn back. The vault seemed to pulse with some dark energy, aching to be opened. As she peered into the depths, what she found sent a shockwave through her. Paperwork, dusty but unmistakably familiar. A file marked with her father's name, entangled in the web of their lives. A treasure trove of hidden truths. "Bring it out!" she cried, desperate. But just then, a loud crack broke through the tension. The earth shuddered beneath them, sending everyone stumbling back. The vault erupted open. A figure emerged from the rubble, tall, cloaked in shadows, a face hidden beneath a hood. "I've come for what is mine," the voice echoed, colder than any winter night. "And the secrets of this family will be revealed." Rebecca felt a chill worm its way through her bones. Who was this? More than just an intruder, much more than a rival. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. But in that moment, everything twisted, relationships dissolving like mist in the morning sun. The reality around her shifted, fear tasting bitter on her lips. What new betrayal had she uncovered? Steps echoed in the dark, leaving her breathless. The past was clawing its way into the present in ways she couldn't even comprehend. Shadows began to dance again, as if reshaping the very fabric of her life. In that instant, she realized the fight wasn't just for survival, but for the truth. Would she brave the darkness that loomed ahead, or would these shocking revelations consume her too? The stakes had never been higher, and the game was just beginning. The figure emerged from the smoke, cloaked in shadows, as if conjured from the wreckage itself. The air felt electric with tension, and Rebecca's heart raced as she squinted at the familiar stature. "Who are you?" she breathed, but deep down, she felt a sickening familiarity. The mysterious figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a face that shook Rebecca to her core. It was someone she had lost long ago, her mother. "I've come for the truth," her mother said, her voice eerily calm, as though she had just strolled in from a walk in the park. "Mom?" Visions of a happier past flooded her mind, but they quickly turned bitter. "You can't be here. You disappeared." Her voice trembled with disbelief. "Oh, sweetheart, I never disappeared. I just had to leave," her mother replied, stepping closer. The crowd fell silent, gasping as they turned their attention to the unfolding drama. Wade's smirk faded. "You? I thought you were dead." "I was forced into hiding. Your schemes, Wade, were always too dangerous," her mother shot back, eyes flashing with defiance. Rebecca's mind reeled as she processed her mother's words. "You knew about all of this? About Dad? The secrets?" A lump formed in her throat, thick and heavy. Her mother nodded slowly. "I had no choice. It was either protect you or let it all come crashing down." And just like that, the illusion of control shattered. Wade took a step back, his bravado crumbling. "But you were supposed to be gone. You were the last variable. We had it all planned out." The air thickened with uncertainty. The truth rattled the very foundation of Rebecca's life. "What do you mean? What was planned?" The pieces began to shift around her. "Your father's debts were bigger than any of us knew. I left to save you from the fallout," her mother explained, urgency spilling from her voice. "But he was chasing power, Rebecca. He got himself involved with people who would do anything." The ground felt like it was pulling away. "So you're saying our whole life has been a lie?" "Yes," her mother choked out, her eyes pleading. "But you need to listen. This is bigger than you can imagine." Before Rebecca could respond, sirens wailed in the distance, creeping closer. Panic enveloped them, weaving chaos into the air. People began scattering in all directions. Speeches turned to screams as the unfolding drama transformed into sheer terror. "Run!" Henry shouted, grabbing Rebecca's arm. "We have to go, now!" But she couldn't move. Not now. Not when the whirlwind of confusion had just revealed something monumental. "Mom, do you really care, or is this just another part of the game?" Her mother's expression faltered, a fleeting shadow of hurt crossing her features. "I cared more than you know, but this is not the time to question that." Heart pounding louder than the chaos, Rebecca gazed into her mother's eyes, searching for a glimmer of truth, but all she could see was turmoil. Just then, another explosion erupted, far louder than the last. Shrapnel rained down, and smoke filled the air, forcing everyone to duck. "Get down!" Henry shielded her, pulling her away from the window. She felt the heat of the flames through the glass, painting everything in flickering hues of orange. In the midst of the confusion, her mother surged forward, her voice cutting through the din. "Listen to me. The vault has the answers. The truth will save you." But Rebecca felt something snap inside her. Why now, after all this time? A sudden realization hit her hard. You're not just my mother. You're part of this web. The lies are as much yours as they are his. Her mother hesitated, a flicker of hurt in her eyes. But before she could respond, a figure jumped down from the ledge above, landing with the grace of a predator. It was Ryan, wounded but on his feet, blood dripping from his shoulder. "Rebecca, you need to run. This is all a trap." With those words, everything shifted again. Rebecca felt herself teetering on the edge of chaos, suffocating on the betrayal surrounding her. Relationships she thought she understood were now veering into dangerous territories, secrets unfurling like confetti into a storm. She looked at Ryan, at her mother, at Henry, and the twisted web of contradictions began to spin tighter. What do I do? The world around her felt like it was falling apart. The sirens wailed louder. The vault whispered promises of secrets, drawing her in, as flames licked at the edges of her reality. And as the crowd surged around them, she realized this was only the beginning of a storm far worse than she could ever imagine. Would she dare to step into the swirling darkness, knowing trust had become a fragile illusion? The dust began to settle, but the chaos lingered in the air like a dagger. Rebecca stared at her mother, whose presence was both a whisper of the past and a shock to the present. She felt her heart racing, caught between love and betrayal. "You should have come back sooner," she shouted, anger pouring out of her. "You can't just waltz in and expect everything to be fixed." "I'm here now," her mother exclaimed, the desperation clear in her voice. "We don't have time for this. Your father is in deeper trouble than you realize. We need to escape this madness." Wade chuckled, watching the family drama unfold with a twisted satisfaction. "Huh, this is rich." A happy family reunion amidst chaos. But his smirk began to fade under the weight of their glances. "Shut up!" Henry yelled, pushing Rebecca aside as he stepped forward, ready to confront Wade. "You're nothing but a parasite. You think you can toy with their lives?" Before Wade could retort, gunshots rang out again, tearing through the air with a deafening crack. Panic surged. People screamed, scattering like leaves in a storm. "Now!" Rebecca's mother shouted, grabbing Rebecca's arm. "We have to go to the vault. It holds the proof we need to end this." With adrenaline rushing through her veins, Rebecca nodded. This was their chance. They dashed toward the opening, Henry close behind. Smoke swirled around them, obscuring the clearing chaos. Ryan limped towards them, eyes wide with panic. "What are you doing? You can't just go there." But a flicker of hope ignited in Rebecca. "Why not? We can end it here." "Because it's a trap," he shouted, desperation clawing at his voice. "They'll never let you leave." "You don't understand." The tension was suffocating. Suddenly, Rebecca felt her mother's hand squeeze hers, a lifeline amidst the storm. "Trust me, please. I'll explain everything afterward." They stepped into the vault, the air thick with an echo of the past. Papers, files, and documents were scattered around like leaves after a storm. Illuminated only by a flickering overhead light, the atmosphere grew dark and consuming. "Here, this." Rebecca's mother pointed to a dust-covered folder. As Rebecca opened it, she felt a chill race down her spine. Names, dates, amounts. Evidence of treachery woven deep within her father's dealings. This was the truth waiting to be exposed. Henry stayed vigilant by the entrance, peering into the swirling shadows. "We don't have long. We have to—" But before he could finish, Wade appeared at the vault entrance, flanked by his remaining men. "Going somewhere?" he sneered, gun drawn, eyes gleaming maliciously. A wave of fear washed over Rebecca. "You won't get away with this," she shouted, holding the folder tightly against her chest. This was her only armor in this war of deceit. Wade stepped forward, dismissing her bravado. "You're outnumbered. Surrender, and maybe I'll let you live." But just as he raised his weapon, a deafening crash echoed in the background, silencing the chaos. The vault door burst open, and a familiar figure stepped in, cloaked in authority and confidence. It was her father, bloodied but standing firm. "Enough!" he bellowed, shaking off his men like a lion confronting challengers. A moment of surreal stillness hung in the air. Rebecca's heartbeats echoed louder than the gunfire. "Dad!" she shouted, torn between relief and dread. "What are you doing?" "I won't let you take my family," he exclaimed, raising his own weapon. "Don't!" Rebecca screamed. But before she could react, her mother stepped forward, eyes blazing. "This isn't the answer. Stand down." In that instant, it was as if time paused. The chaos outside was muted, the world shrinking to the tension in that vault. 3 generations stood at a precipice. Conflict, betrayal, familial loyalty twisting like a chain around their hearts. Then, before anyone could act, an explosion echoed outside, and dust filled the room, creating a thick fog. Rebecca coughed, shielding her face. As she blinked through the haze, she saw her father's expression shift, a flicker of fear, or was it regret? "Run!" he finally shouted, urgency piercing through. "We have to end this, together." In that moment, her decision crystallized. She had been searching for the truth, for closure in the chaos, but what she found was something even greater: reconciliation. She had to believe they could mend the fracture, that they could heal the wounds that had festered for too long. With that glimmer of hope, Rebecca, her mother at her side, and Henry charging with determination, burst from the vault into the chaos outside. The world awaited, and she felt her heart surge with readiness. But as they emerged, the shadows whispered, and the fight was far from over. The truth was just beginning to unravel, and mysteries still lingered in the air. If you want to see how the fight plays out, and if this family can truly come together or remain in the storm, you must subscribe now. Tap that red button so you don't miss a single exclusive story. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and make our voices heard. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about tea.